So thinking about how often do you change up your approaches to selling? Is this something you're looking at and tweaking every day, reflecting on what you did and doing something different tomorrow? Is it more of kind of once you get through the week and kind of say, what do I need to do differently next week? More about every now and then, or maybe not doing it at all. Would love to see what folks are trying to do around then. And it could be, do you change your message? Do you change your tactics? Do you change your calls to action? Things like that. All right. Great. Excellent. Looks like we've got our winner here as well, with over half saying about every now and then. Oops, going up a little bit more. Yeah. I guess I'm surprised a little bit about that. I don't know about you, Jody.
I am too. You know what? Honestly, the pandemic has told me that the whole entire daily, it should have been, for me, in my opinion, daily, because the pandemic changed the game for everyone in every single industry. Yeah. So every now and then, that means that you stay consistent with what you've been doing. And during a pandemic, or even just like when the news changes, anything that happens, the tanker that was stuck. All these different ways are making me think that every day you should have a piece of what's happening right now in your sales pitch. And so that every now and then, makes me nervous.
Yeah, I know. Me too. And I think that that leads into kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. I was not expecting to see over half of our audience say that they're doing the same thing or only changing things up every now and then, because I did want to talk about the definition of insanity. I think many of us have heard this before, is the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And so I think that's something that in our practices around marketing and selling, it can get pretty comfortable to kind of do the same thing and try to say, oh, well, why didn't today's thing I did yesterday give me any different results? And so that's really what we're here to talk about today, is to think about how do you change up what you're doing, tweak something a little bit, again, even just every day, and kind of see if you can create different results. So let's talk a little bit about comfort zone versus growth zone, and why is it so important that we go from one to the other. So this is taken off of a site called Positive Psychology, and there are different ways that people have described this in the past, but I think this one does a nice job to kind of say, that there's a journey and a path from going where you are today to where you can be and continue to grow. But net, being in the comfort zone is a place where there's routines and that it is devoid of risk. So it's a very, very safe place that you can feel in control. And so when you're doing the same things over and over again, sending the same emails or using the same call scripts, taking the same approach to outreaching to prospects, it gives you a sense of control. But the downside of that is that it can lead to boredom. And it also can lead to plateaued progress, right? So you get so far, but then it's so hard to get to that next spot. But being in that, outside of that comfort zone, can get you to a point where you're learning and you're having growth. And so the trick is really finding that right level of uncomfortableness that challenges you without tipping you into a panic zone, because that's a place you don't want to go, right? Because that also is a place of stalled progress and is stagnant. So there's really kind of what somebody on one of these sites that I was reading about calls the Goldilocks zone of, that place where you've got enough uncomfortableness, enough challenge to your comfort zone that you still feel like you can make progress forward, but you're not in that panic zone. And so, I think these are some concepts that we can apply to cold calling and cold outreach. And we'll talk about some of those in a second. But Jody, wanted to see if you had any additional comments you'd like to share with the audience here on this. Oh, Jody, I think you're still on mute.
Such a rookie move. Such a rookie move so early in the morning. No, you know what? Honestly, I want everyone to really hear you and just focus on you right now. And let's just do Q&A afterwards. That way we were saying within the flow.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the things I want to talk about in terms of comfort zone versus growth zone is around elements of control, right? Because that's one of the things where, having that ability to still feel in control while you're growing can help you make that next leap forward. So you can push your boundaries and be prepared for things that you can't control. For example, a prospect's reaction to your outreach. So let's talk about some of the things you can't control. There's going to be 4 areas I want to talk through with the group here today. One's about research, one's about timing, your principles and your approach, and finally practice. And so that'll lead into what we were talking about before with our workshop. So let's talk about research. I'm probably going to spend the most amount of time here on this because this is so, so important, so fundamental to having a great experience for you and for your prospect in terms of cold outreach. It's kind of a cliche, but knowledge is power, and it's a super powerful tool when you're prospecting. I think the best way to lose an opportunity is to come off mismatched with your message to the buyer. So I can't emphasize enough how much research is important to before you get on a cold call or even a cold email. And so many of you have probably heard this before, but I think it's important to just remind ourselves some of those ways you can research to get more personalized in your outreach. First and foremost, it's pretty straightforward. We do this every day, Googling, looking at social media, trying to understand a little bit more about the person that you're targeting. What have they commented on recently? What have they liked on social media? Where have they spoken or written an article? Many people that we might be targeting are out there themselves evangelizing for their product or for something that they're personally passionate about. What can you learn about them that you can connect to? And then also from their company's perspective, what have they published into the marketplace that tells about their company's initiatives, looking at their 10K or their annual report, or diving into their About Us area in their website, and just kind of see what is it that's important to them in this moment. It'll take 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be more than that, because there's probably something in those first 10 minutes of research that you can find that will give you something that says, hey, this is interesting to what we're trying to connect with. So that work will pay off. And I'm going to share with you two examples, one a negative example and one a positive example. So on the negative side, I'll start with that. And this is something that I was actually a recipient of. So I got a phone call the other day, and the person identified themselves from a company that I'm actually a client of. So I was like, okay, great, excellent. They're doing outreach, love to chat with folks that I work with all the time. It's great. Unfortunately, the person said, are you the head of marketing at X company? And it was the company I worked at 5 years ago. And I was like, well, I was the head of marketing at that company 5 years ago. I'm currently at this company and we're actually a client. And that, threw the person off from their goal of what they wanted to accomplish. And so, they had to pivot pretty quickly. And I think, unfortunately, they kind of said, okay, sorry, bye, and closed the call pretty quickly. But, taking 2 minutes to look at my LinkedIn profile would have said, hey, Allison's at a new company right now, and maybe I should check and see if that company is already a client or if they're still a prospect, and create an opportunity to have a really personalized conversation. It could be, thanks for being a client. Is there someone you think who could be a great prospect for us who would also benefit from our solution? Or is there anything that we can do to help your experience be better? So take that 2 minute, 5 minute opportunity to really check and confirm that you've got the right context. So that's the negative example where personalization and research could have helped. Let's look at the positive side. And so that's what I have here on the screen. So it's actually an email versus a cold call. But I share this because I think it's really powerful for a couple of reasons. One, the person did their homework. They know as a marketeer, personalization is critical to what I do, and they know that that's important to me. And their tools have a way to help me take that personalization to the next level. And so they shared a piece of content from their own site that speaks to that topic. But then they connected it to something that is personal to me. They Googled me and they found that I had actually been interviewed for an article where I talk about the most important thing for a marketeer is to understand their prospect and to be able to personalize. So they were able to find out something about me that connected to their offer, bring that in, make a really, really interesting connection, and get my attention. I share this email with everyone, with every BDR and SDR team I work with. I say this is a great example. And so I think the second part that's really interesting about this is a follow-up in a chain of emails. And so instead of it saying, hey, just checking in to see if you read my email, that you have to scroll down and really read the body of what I was trying to talk to, it continues to add value in the conversation. And in this part of the chain, it actually got me to respond, right? I hadn't responded before then. So I think this is really powerful to kind of also show that, being able to continue that personalization, that knowledge of the person that you're trying to engage with, not only in that first touch, but also along the way, and continue to demonstrate and illustrate that, you understand and you think there's a reason why you should connect. All right. So let's talk a little bit about timing, because that's always another thing I think that we're trying to figure out. Where's the silver bullet in what's the right time to reach out to someone? I'm not going to go into statistics about what time of day or what day of the week or what month of the year to reach out. There's plenty of research on that. And I think ultimately, too, that comes down to knowing your own business and your own clients, and using the data and experience that you have to figure out what works best there. I do think that's important, but I don't think it's one size fits all. But I did want to talk a little bit about some research that Gartner did, and they found this approach that they call LinkedIn stalking. Don't necessarily love the term, but I think that there's something to be said here. And so they were looking at when are prospects most open to hearing about new technology in this case, and they found that it was within 8 to 10 weeks of someone starting a new role. And the reasons for this was that, by that point, folks have gotten over that barrage of new information of starting a new job. They figured out, okay, what is their kind of role and initiative, and what are the key things that are really, really important to them in this role. And then they've gotten a sense of, okay, what's broken? What do I need to fix? And where are my priorities? And so this is a great time to kind of come in with that very targeted message about how you can help them make an impact in their role. And so it may seem like it's a good idea to kind of say, oh, somebody got a new job and, they're new in their role. I saw that on LinkedIn or in some of my other tools. Like, can I go ahead and, take that opportunity to jump right away? And according to this research, it's actually better to wait a little bit and let them settle in. So what you can do there is log a task for yourself in your CRM for about the 8-week mark. And in that meantime, continue to see what they're posting on their social media, see what their company's posting about their initiatives, use that to really inform a personalized outreach at that time where they're going to be in a good frame of mind to be receptive to that message in the first place. So found some interesting success with that as well. I think again, it's about patience in this case, but I think you can use this to kind of say, all right, how do I build up my funnel of people to go after, not just today, but also in a few weeks? And so I think this a little bit kind of leads into talking about using intent-based data as well to fuel your outreach and your messages when you do that. So tools like ZoomInfo, TechTarget, some of the account-based marketing vendors offer information to help you understand, are people in a buying mindset? Are they researching certain topics that relate to your domain? Are they researching competitors? Have they been on your site, etc.? And so using those tools can also help you understand, is it the right time for me to move in on this company or this person? Or is it better that I stand down for a little bit until they get through that? So that knowledge, that data is also power in order to find out when's the right timing and what's the right message to put in front of people. Okay, and speaking of tools, tools like auto dialers and email cadence systems, I think have really, really revolutionized how much more activity you can get out of your day when you're prospecting. And in some cases, you can really set and forget outreach until someone raises their hands. And I do think there's a time and a space for this, but not at the expense of being human and sounding human, because nobody likes to feel like they're the recipient of a form email or a script. I think we've all probably seen these and maybe even been perpetrators of them. And so this comes down to, your own principles about how you want to behave, how you want to act as a vendor, as a partner in terms of solving customer problems like we saw at the beginning of the polls, right? And really, how do you make sure that you leverage technology to help you be productive, but also make sure that you can still portray yourself as human, have that human touch. And I think with the last year of COVID, in the circles that I'm in and that talk about cold prospecting and being the most effective SDR, that's really been one of the key things that has been unlocked this year, is being able to be more human, because everyone is in a situation that's not normal. It's different for everybody, and everyone's struggling with a little bit of a different disruption to their normal day. But how can you create empathy, be genuine, and have that opportunity to connect, even while you're prospecting? And so I think this is absolutely where some of that comfort zone area can be broken through, instead of just, again, taking that stock email and saying, okay, I'm going to use that again. How do you take a more human approach, take those 5 minutes to connect with somebody and be more genuine? And I think, what's really interesting about the results of that first poll around helping to solve customer problems is that it really creates an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, to be curious, to find out about that other person and what's making them tick, what's not, et cetera, et cetera. So using questions in your emails and in your call scripts to really pull out from people what's important to them, as opposed to completely just going by the book, by the script. And then, being able to have that human connection, I think gives you an opportunity to go off script too, right? To listen, to be able to respond based on what they share with you, not just what you anticipate there. And I think that will set you apart from the dozens or maybe even hundreds of kind of robotic experiences that people get every day, who are targets like for their other companies as well as yours. And so if you can create that different experience by being more human, they just might pause and give you that little extra time and attention that you need. All right, let's get into the practice side of it. So this is leading up to our workshop. So I hope folks are thinking about some things that they would like advice or feedback on. So on the practice side, there are a few things I want to talk about here. And one is really around reframing anxiety as excitement. And what does that mean? So physiologically, as humans, stress has certain physiological attributes, right? Your stomach may be getting a little queasy, your hands may shake, your voice may shake, you get nervous, you can't really kind of sit still, et cetera, et cetera. And stress has real meaningful purposes, biological purposes for us, right? It helps us understand if we want to fight or flight or freeze. And so it can have a whole spectrum of things, and it can manifest itself in anxiety, right? That's really kind of panic induced, and it's terrifying, and it can be freezing in some ways, or it can be also part of excitement, right? Something that is very positive. And so one of the things that I learned a long, long time ago when I was doing a lot of stage work in choirs and in theater and things like that, was how do you change your anxiety into excitement? How do you take that physical feeling, and instead of going down the rabbit hole into, oh my goodness, this is terrible and I'm going to freeze, or I'm going to be stumbling on my words or whatnot, and how do you reframe it to think about a time when that physical manifestation actually resulted in something that was positive? Maybe it was starting that first day at your new job where you had those butterflies, but it was a really great day. Or you went on a first date and you were really nervous about it. You had those physical stressors, but then it was a great experience, and you just connected with somebody so greatly. It's possible to kind of think about those things when you're in that state of stress and say, how do I want to transform that? And so I think we talk a lot about mindfulness these days, and I think this is one of those areas where you can say, if I take a moment to understand what I'm feeling physically, why do I feel that way? And then how can I harness that and use that to get me into that first call, to send that email to somebody that I think is really important, I really want to land. I think it can just have powerful impacts there. And then you can also take that to the literal physical level. Before you get on a call, you can do something called the Wonder Woman stance. And my camera's not going to show it right now, but basically what you do is you stand up, you put your legs shoulder width apart, you plant your feet on the ground, you put your hands on your hips, stand up tall, and you just get your body in a, I'm sitting up straight even thinking about this. You just get your body in a place where you feel centered and powerful, and you take that energy that's in your body and you channel it. And that can help you get ready to take that next step into making that first call. So that's I think always kind of a fun thing to do yourself, or if you're in a group in a calling pod, whether it's virtual or physical, to do that as well as a group. And so then taking that and breaking that down into how do you take these small steps to get out of the comfort zone and get into that growth zone. So if you do your Wonder Woman stance before you get onto that first call, that's one thing. How do you break the ice to get ready for that first call of the day? One of the things that I always recommend folks to do, and I love to practice with, is doing what I call a friendly call. So calling up a colleague and being like, hi, I'm Allison from Stack State, and then give my pitch. So I call somebody where I know I'm not going to get hung up on, I'm not going to get a negative reaction, but I'm going to get into the zone where I can practice my pitch, and then I can then move on to the actual real call for the next thing. Sometimes you might have to do 1 or 2 calls if it's early in the morning, coffee hasn't kicked in yet. But creating that practice within your organization can help you. It's like with writer's block, right? Sometimes getting the first word on the page unleashes the momentum for the next step. So definitely kind of see if you can take that moment to break the ice. Also, we've talked a bit about routine and how the comfort zone and routine and safety in there creates kind of this stagnantness. So break up the routine of the pattern. If you email first, maybe try a call first. If you call first, maybe try an email. Also see, maybe does it make sense to put a hook out on social media and DM somebody on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and see if you can kind of use that as a way to break out of the routine, try something new, and expand those boundaries from what you're used to. And then the last thing I want to talk about on practice is around making sure you're able to help your brain work in a way that's most efficiently by not having to context switch too much. I think we all find with multitasking and moving from task to task today that it can be kind of hard to get back into the zone of, how do you feel like you have control and you have mastery of what you want to say, what you want to share, et cetera, et cetera. So based on that research that we talked about earlier, how can you group your calls together so you can get into a flow, you can get into momentum, you can use what you've learned from the last call to the next call. And so if you're, for example, targeting different verticals, maybe you group all of your prospecting activities for a vertical together for the first part of your blitz. And so if you've learned something about the financial services industry, for example, that you think is going to be relevant for multiple people you're targeting, group those folks together, try that messaging out, see what you learn, and then you can use it in the next one, as opposed to having to pivot from learning about financial services to talking about something in technology or in healthcare and having to context switch too much. And you can even do things like calling in the same region, right? We're in opening day for baseball here in the US right now this week. And so if you're calling into a particular region, how can you use their opening day as maybe a warm opener to a conversation, and use that multiple times in order to kind of break the ice for yourself, and also make sure that you're connecting with your target audience as well. All right, getting into the last practice recommendation that gets us into our workshop, getting feedback. I think this is as important as doing your own research about the folks you're trying to target. And we can get feedback from so many different places. Peers, managers, obviously those are great ones. It's harder right now when we're not sitting side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and hearing other people's calls or getting feedback on our calls from our peers who are sitting next to us. Doesn't mean that can't happen. Get someone to ride along with you on a call and give you feedback during the process. If you use a recording tool for your calls, listen to your calls, ask a peer or your manager to listen to one that you felt really good about or you felt really terrible about, and see what feedback you can get from them during that process. Also, you know, I think friends, family, and others are also really great, because you have to, in those cases, sometimes explain your point to folks who aren't familiar with what you do or with the value proposition. And you can understand, where are you not clear? Where do you need to elaborate a little bit more as well? And then ultimately, if you have the opportunity to get feedback from the folks that you're talking with, your prospects or whatnot, that's always great. Does not always easy, not always a time for it, but I think, you know, having that openness to say, hey, how could we have a better conversation next time? How could I help be more clear, or connect our solutions to your problems more effectively, will give you that much more insight to, one, what's important to them, and two, what you can do to have a better, stronger conversation the next time. So with that, I think we're ready to open up the field, and see if there are some questions or ideas that people want to put out there. And or Jody, if you have other thoughts based on what we talked about here as well, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, so I love the fact that you touched base on some clear, concise items that most people are probably thinking, oh, right, I forgot about that. I haven't thought about that in a long time. And a couple of them that I had to write down was the research part. As a former radio producer of the Maddie in the Morning Show, one of the things that always got me was the fact that so many people would want to have a sales calls. They wanted to engage with the Maddie in the Morning Show, and they didn't know they didn't get up early. So we're a morning show. They didn't get up early, and they had no idea who we targeted. So we targeted women, and yet we would get all these like John Deere, not saying that women don't drive John Deere, but at the time, people were just engaging with us with male products, which was very much a Howard Stern thing versus a Maddie in the Morning Show thing at the time, and still to this day. So it was very surprising that it wasn't that hard to just listen to the program, any program, to see what was on the show, to know what commercials would make the most sense, what businesses we want to engage with. So that was very important. When I was Governor Romney's press secretary, the head press secretary, her name was Sean. And so the amount of times that people would call and say, can I speak to Sean, please? I'm like, do you know him? I know him very well. And so it was very comical where they just assumed. And so just doing that little homework was a big deal. A lot of your clients, they don't update their LinkedIn. So although LinkedIn is a great way to check, but I always tell everyone 3 touch points. So Google is right there at your fingertips. Use 3 touch points, where find other resources other just than on LinkedIn or what's on Facebook, to double check that you're talking to the right person, to the right company, because so many people have the same names. So you want to make sure you're speaking to the right person, you have the right background. So 3 touch points always and forever. The comfort zone versus the growth zone. As salespeople, you're an entrepreneur in yourself. So you're always in the uncomfortable. You're always in the uncomfortable zone. Like, so you always are there, and you're okay with there. I mean, you're talking about sales. And so you will always grow if you're always in that area. So I loved when you started it out right at the beginning, because it makes the sense. If you're comfortable, I think you're a little arrogant, and I don't want you to ever be arrogant. I want you to be uncomfortable, so that way you're constantly pushing yourself to be better. What was the other part? The LinkedIn. Oh, LinkedIn, great product. But right now, LinkedIn has all these cut and paste. When someone's pitching me, I can tell that it's the same. I mean, everyone's sending me the same verbiage. Please create your own. That being personalized and getting to know who you're talking to makes more sense. But everyone now is realizing that LinkedIn is providing you the content. So just change it up just a little bit instead of just cutting and pasting. And oh my goodness, the robocalls. Oh, they kill me. The robos are painful in every single way. So think about when you are going to a university, you're in this big, huge lecture hall. You're just a number. And so I don't want to be a number. I don't want to be part of the robocall. Find ways to customize yourself so that way you stand out. Because when you stand out, even that little handwritten note, I have a salesperson that sends me a handwritten note, even though I tell them, I'm like, save your stamp, stop it. I have so many of your custom notes. But it's like, it makes me laugh. It makes me giggle. But I remember her every single time she sends a note. She just drops it in the mail. I own a business. You have my address. It's not that hard. Have a stack right on your desk. Have it on Fridays, where Fridays are my send my thank you notes. And so you just send them out, customize. It makes the life so much easier. So those are the things that I picked up right off the bat. And I definitely have other things that I can talk about, but those are the ones that just really caught my attention. And they're not like oh my God, this is so new to me. This is just like oh my God, I forgot, and I haven't been doing this, and I need to rewind the clocks. So yay, Allison, great job I love it. So let's just go to some questions here. So
Awesome.
I'm going to go right to Scott Duart. So Scott says, have you seen the landscape change from cold calling to cold emailing? Where do you feel you are getting a better?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, okay, there we go. Excellent. I think I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, so cold calling versus cold emailing. Yeah, I think that has definitely changed over the last year. And right now, my team is split between the US and Europe as well. So it's also very different. So I think that particularly because a lot of people are working from home and all of our desk phones aren't necessarily being forwarded, cold calling has gotten a lot harder right now. And so, my team is seeing that there's less responses to calling. There might be, 3 or 4 out of, 30 or 40 calls, but it's not, that many responses. And cold emailing, when it's personalized, has a better hit rate than cold calling or form emails. Particularly in Europe as well, we're seeing really good success with LinkedIn. And same thing, it's about making sure that we've got the right knowledge about the person, that we're really steeped in understanding of their business and can create a personalized outreach. And particularly because of GDPR and being able to get connected with somebody before you can call them and email them, that has been pretty successful for our team right now.
Yeah, for our company, we're a global company and we're hitting all the continents except for Antarctica. We will get there one day. But for us, I mean, a lot of people are engaging with us and they're seeing that if they send an email saying, hey, can I get 15, 20 minutes of your time on Zoom or WhatsApp, it gets our attention a lot more. And so the cold calling, it is harder you're absolutely right. It's harder because people are working from every which way and we're dealing with different time zones. So we usually get a lot of emails that are customized to us, asking a specific question, and then requesting, can we get 10 to 15 minutes of your time? If you say 10 to 15 minutes, if it's a good conversation, it could be an hour, it could be 30 minutes. If it's a bad conversation, we're not winning or losing. We have 10 to 15 minutes. No, thank you. But the person really, really saw something you said and it caught their attention and they want to engage with you. So I love the fact that you can use it in both ways, depending on who you're targeting. I work primarily with small businesses. And so small businesses are a little bit more agile to seeing these versus a large company. Yes, you're dealing with a lot of individuals. And are you engaging with the right person or just spinning in the wind? All right. So thank you very much, Scott. Let's go to Paul. And let's see. Are there any suggestions on campaign creation, launch, lead follow-up, etc.?
Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah, so I mean, I think we can take some of the principles that we talked about here around research and grouping to talk about campaigns, right? And really look at, are there themes or trends that are happening in a particular pocket of your target audience that you can capitalize on? So whether, for example, in financial services, if there are regulation changes and that hooks to what your solution can help either support or address or things like that, that's a great way to look at a campaign and say, how do you take advantage of that people will be thinking about it and leverage that. In terms of like other ways to think about campaigns, one of the things that we look at is our solution integrates with a whole bunch of different tools. And so using, again, tools that we have that help us understand what companies have different tools, we can group companies together based on what they have installed and create campaigns and messages that focus on how do we make the value of that installed tool better, et cetera. I think the big thing to think about there is, what are the touch points and experiences that you want to create, not just in that first touch, right? Whether that's coming from the BDR, SDR team or for marketing, but what's that dialogue you want to cultivate, that conversation you want to have over multiple touch points. And so thinking about not only what's your script in your email that you might need, but what is a resource that you can have, whether it's a webinar, a white paper, a video, something like that, that helps to continue to tell the story that people can consume on their own time. And having those few things in place before you actually launch the campaign so you can keep keep that dialogue going for people who respond. And then in terms of lead follow-up, I think the best practice is speed matters. Because folks are, they have a moment in time when they're thinking about solving a problem, they're trying to find a vendor or a solution that can help them. They're going to be responsive to the first people that talk to them, but then also too, their priorities may shift within 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 days. So not getting there fast enough will just, unfortunately, maybe leave you out of the running, even if you have something that could be a good fit.
Allison, I'm going to follow up on Paul's question by asking, what do you do when you realize that individual just isn't gonna? It's just not going to happen. I mean, you've done everything that you possibly can. You've followed all the rules. This person has taken all of our tips, and they're like, you know what? At the end of the day, I feel like I'm just stalking this person. So when do I get to the point where I say, I need to just pull away? This is never going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the $64,000 question, right? I think the best practices are that, somewhere between 8 and 12 touches is kind of that magic space. But I've also been reading some stuff recently that talks about how that number has been increasing over time because there's so much outreach that people are getting that they're just delaying and delaying responding. And so it's almost like this vicious cycle of, we have to, the metrics tell us to keep going, but then the response rates are kind of longer and longer. So I think the important part goes back to the being human thing that we talked about before, is you still want to be able to maintain a relationship with the person and the company going forward. You want them to think about you positively. And so finding that point where either you feel like you've become annoying. I think that's a good signal for yourself. But then also to really listening to the responses that you get of no, thank you, not right now. And if they've said that a couple of times, respecting that and saying, great, I'll keep you on the mailing list and we'll reach out in 6 months, and respecting their feedback on that. I think that's the most important. I don't think there's a silver bullet about when exactly is the right time to dial back.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. All right, I'm going to go to Nicole. My paying customers are restaurant owners themselves. How do I best approach them while they are busy in the kitchen or when their staff says, owner isn't here today?
That's a great question. I'm not a domain expert when it comes to the restaurant business. So I'm going to caveat a little bit of my feedback here based on, I'd have to do some more research myself. But I think it's about how can you think about their experience and matching with when they're going to be most open to that, right? What does their day look like, right? Are they doing 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? Are they doing early mornings to afternoons, and then they might be available in the afternoons for other ways? So really try to understand their cadence and when they might have openings there. And then I think the other part then is, what are other creative ways that you could get in front of them? And is it about connecting with something else that they're already engaged with? Is there another vendor that you can potentially collaborate with that they're working with already, and seeing is there a way you can work together? So those are a couple of things that I would suggest. I don't know, Jody, if you've had other experience in this domain or if you've got some additional advice.
Yeah, this one was like a fun one for me because this is like a low-hanging fruit. Literally just go to the restaurant or go to the location, and every day or once a week, go there and grab a cup of coffee, sit down, get to know the staff, have that conversation, start forming the relationship with that restaurant. We're in this for the long game. I mean, all that we're doing, creating content, the sales, the marketing, we're in this for the long game, and you just can't expect that they're going to pick up the phone, because small businesses hardly ever pick up the phone until the end of the night when they're just moving so fast. And as a small business owner, you choose to be a small business owner because you could have a life. And that sounds so weird, but I can walk out of the office, go pick up my kids, or go pick up my husband or wife. I can do other things. And so picking up your phone call isn't the thing that I want to do. But if you're really wanting to work with me, that means you're invested in my business. So come on by and have something to eat. Because not only are you wanting to talk to me and getting to know my staff, but you're really the story of, oh, I ate this week. Oh, I see that you tried this, or I see that you're using this vendor. hello, it makes it part of your story, which makes it so much more fun for you. Sales should be so exciting because you're intertwining your potential customers' stories into your story. So I love this one. That was a great one.
Yeah.
So Nicole, thank you for this one. All right, so let's go to Andres. Andres, I apologize because I probably just said your name so wrong. Nice tips and tricks. How has the COVID and WFH affected cold calling now that no one is in the office? Are people more inclined to use personal phones?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. More people are using their mobiles for work. At least that's what I've seen so far. But I do think that we've had a mixed response to being a business cold calling somebody's mobile, particularly in Europe again, but even here in the US as well. I think many of us are using our mobiles for everything, right? We know we're going to get telemarketer calls. We know we're going to get texts from our vet to remind us for appointments and all sorts of stuff. So, we're very attached to it, but it's also still a very private space. It's our life is in that. And so I think we have to be a little bit careful when we think about using personal phones. And there are resources and tools that will capture mobile phones for people as well as their business phone and their business email. And so I think the rule of thumb is try the other ways first, right? See if their direct dial for their office is forwarded to their computer via VoIP or over to their mobile. Try their business email, etc. And ask permission if you can to use their mobile, because again, I think it's a private space and people don't want to feel like that's being invaded. So those are kind of the things that we're looking at, is how do we take advantage of the fact we have this information, but make sure that we've got permission to use it as well.
Yeah, I'm going to keep, literally, you just nailed it. So we can just move on for this. This is great. Okay. Andres, thank you very much. I do love, let's see here. Let's go to Victor. Victor has a good one. How do you manage to get email efficiency in countries where there is no email culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So I think, part of it comes down to knowing the culture and knowing how people are going to respond and changing your approach based on that. I'll give you an example. It's not email, but it's similar. One of the countries that we target is Spain, and we were focusing on doing LinkedIn programs to outreach to people to connect and start a dialogue there. We were finding folks in Spain were less responsive than what we see in, say, the UK or the Netherlands or things like that. And so our team was like, okay, not sure what's going on here. And so I have a really, really good friend who's from Spain originally. He's in sales himself and whatnot. So I talked with him and said, hey, help me understand what's going on here. Is it us? Is it the channel? Is it something else? And he explained that culturally, LinkedIn is probably more used just for finding a job and for engaging in that part of someone's work life versus, engaging to find new vendors and things like that right now. So that was really, really, really important information for our team to say, okay, maybe this isn't the right channel in which to engage. And his feedback to us was, more traditional approaches like picking up the phone would work better for this audience. So we pivoted. And so now, we're looking at how do we leverage that channel, phone, instead of LinkedIn to get better results. So I think that's the key thing there is it may not always be that every channel is appropriate for an audience or a country, location, et cetera. And it's really about getting down to understanding your audience and what's going to be important for them and then shifting appropriately.
I love that you say that, because that's definitely part of the research part, understanding who you're targeting. There's so many different countries that I go to whether I'm in Bulgaria, whether I'm in China, whether I'm in Morocco, whether I'm in South Africa. Every single time I go to a different country, the first thing I ask is what's the most popular social media? What's the popular way of going? Because some countries have their own different platforms that I need to get onto, so that way my team understands how we're going to message them. So it's great that this question was asked, because it gets on a bigger level. Not everyone uses the same things that we use in the States. So the second that you decide to go global, you have to understand the norms of the people, whether it's their holidays, whether it's like I go, what's like easier, user friendly for them, and also just like the internet connections. A lot of countries that you're going to engage with don't have a strong internet connection. So if you're just saying let's meet on Zoom, it may not work for someone. So just being aware of the norms of the different cultures is amazing. So Victor, great question. I'm going to do 2 more questions so that way I can get a how do we end with Allison? Let's see. We'll go for Thomas. What to do when the gatekeeper simply refuses to put you through?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. Again, no silver bullet on this one. But I think one of the things that I have seen folks do very, very well is get to know the gatekeeper and leverage them as a resource, right? And not see them just as a pass-through, and figure out how can you also help this person, right? In terms of getting their job done or helping them be the best gatekeeper that they can, right? And so spending time getting to know that person. There's a gentleman that I worked with several years ago who I think was probably one of the strongest SDRs I worked with before, and he had amazing relationships with, the person sitting at the main desk on the switchboard, or executive assistants for very high up folks. And his whole thing was really, really being very human with the gatekeepers and getting to know them personally, and not always asking for something, right? Sometimes just calling to check in on them.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much, Thomas. I have a gatekeeper. Her name is Sarah. Sarah's amazing. I mean, sometimes we're busy, and so having a gatekeeper that's there that can weed through things is amazing. So I really do love that. So wait, Steph.
I know. Well, we only have 5 more minutes left, so I think we have time for like one more question. But I am here. And I have bad news.
I know. My God, this has been great. So I have one more. So we have Joel. All right. So what are your thoughts on doing outreach to multiples in the same organization at the same time? Might it seem like we are shooting from the hip?
I think it is absolutely critical to do outreach to multiple people at the organization at the same time, particularly if you're selling mid-market to enterprise, because we know that the buying teams are so big in those organizations, 5 to 8 to 12 people, in some cases even larger. The important part there is coordinating the message. And so again, understanding that buying team, who you're targeting, what's important to them, and how it links to everybody else. So I think this is absolutely probably where more time would get spent in doing that research. And if you've got multiple people, maybe an SDR and a sales rep and somebody from marketing working on this account, coordinating that is super, super critical. Making sure that, if you're the quarterback on this account, talk to marketing, make sure if you want that organization and those people in the marketing streams, you give them the thumbs up or you have them take them out. You talk with your SDR and say, hey, I want you to go after these 5 people. I'll go after these 5 people and we'll bring them together. It's so critical. And I think from a timing perspective, it's imperative because you just can't do it serially. It'll just take forever. But I do think it's important. It just takes a little bit of extra work, research, and coordination. So thinking about, meeting every few days on how you're progressing on that, what you need to tweak is part of that process as well. But can be really, really satisfying when you get multiple people to raise their hands and they've already talked to each other behind the scenes too.
So a little bit of feedback in regards when you're dealing with small businesses, it's a little bit harder because when you're dealing with small businesses, they all talk and it's a small organization. And so find that right person to talk to, because if they find out that you're talking to multiple people, then they get turned off. And so small businesses see it in a whole different way. So find the right person. Again, it's a small business. It makes it that much easier. Target the person, go after the person, research the person, and then really engage. And so I just want to give my quick little feedbacks in regards of a couple of things before we just hand it off to Allison and then to Steph, is that bring experts to the table. If you are trying to engage with an organization and you don't know the norms, engage with someone that you know that's an expert and bring them with you to the table. So that way you have a backup. So you're trying to sell to this person your product, but if you have an expert saying why this will benefit the individual, that's a plus one. When you guys spoke about the stance of the Wonder Woman stance, I'm all about smile and dial. You know when you're in a good mood and you know when you're in a bad mood. and they can hear it. I can hear it on the phone if you're in a good mood. So smile and dial. Go in front of the mirror. You know you've practiced your pitch. So now you're smiling. I'm ready to go. I've had my coffee. I had my green tea, whatever it takes. Identify with your potential client. Find if it's something relational or relatable to them. I mean, you've already done your homework. Do they have sports? Allison mentioned about the Red Sox, or baseball season, I should say. So find things that are relatable and then just engage. And my favorite one is you only have to be 10% smarter than the person that you're talking to, meaning that you have a Google alert on whatever's happening in the industry right now, today, this second. So you got up, these alerts came out of your phone, and then you get on the phone with them and you're talking, you're like, did you hear? Did you see? Did you notice? And they're like, oh my God, how do you already know? 10% smarter than the person that's next to you. So keep that in mind when you are creating your moment of truth and the moment of engaging with your potential client. And you know what? Moment of truth and the moment of engaging with your potential client.